What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Great League once again using the best Pokemon from each region that for whatever reason no one else is using. And of course today we're looking at the Galar region. Now in yesterday's video I mentioned I had struggled to put a team together, and that was because I was desperate to make Toxtricity work, one of the craziest sim heroes I've ever seen, as it supposedly has a 28-13 record against the Open Great League meta. However, most of the time that's with a power-up punch bait that gets shielded and then landing a boosted wild charge, which hardly ever plays out that way. Also, it's worth mentioning like 50% of teams have a Mud Slapper or some sort of ground type Pokemon, and this Pokemon gets instantly deleted by basically any ground type. So it was pretty much impossible to run. Once I gave up on Toxtricity, I was able to find some success with a backline that was still weak to ground, but much more versatile with both Galarian Slowbro and Slowking. I'd wanted to run this duo from the get-go, but it took me multiple days actually and 10 plus charge TMs to get Psyshock on the Slowking, which by the way has a ton of different charge move options. But anyways, in an attempt to cover for the ground weakness, I'm running Appleton in the lead, which can also do fairly well into ghost types, which my backline is weak against since it does have Astonish. However, dark types were very problematic for me to beat with this team. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Which Pokemon that got buffed this season that you still haven't seen anyone else using would you like to see me showcase on the channel? Let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle, leading Appleton into Shadow Credilli. Now, depending on the fast move, this could be a really good or a really bad matchup. They're on Acid, so I swap out into Slowking, and even after throwing an Astonish and swapping out, Slowking able to reach a Psyshock after just 5 Acids, so able to win CMP. Big damage as well with that Psyshock. I know shield there. They're going to come in with a Skeledirge, and I can reach a Surf. Now, unfortunately, they will get a full Incinerate farm down, and they're going to come out with 80 energy there as they get a 4 Incinerates. We come back in with the Appleton as I can deal super effective damage with, of course, the Astonishes here. They fire off a Crunch, which I was very surprised about in a video a few days ago when I was shoutcasting some battles. They also debuff my defense, which is certainly not ideal. They swap back into Shadow Credilli. However, we can come in with the Galarian Slowbro. I'm gonna, of course, have to tank a Rock Tomb. They debuff my attack, but we come out with back-to-back Brutal Swings. They come back in with the Skeledirge. I am debuffed here, so Brutal Swing won't quite KO, but it does put them into one Confusion farm down range, meaning I don't take any damage there from the Incinerates, and their final Pokemon is going to be Shadow Sizzle. I'm just barely able to reach back-to-back Brutal Swings, but we are still debuffed. The opponent is going to correctly no-shield both of those, as an Outrage would do more damage. However, they have put themselves into range where actually I don't need any charge moves. We go for the Astonish farm down, we barely get there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. You can see Shadow Dragonair in the leads. Of course, not a good matchup for the Appleton, as we are going to hit for neutral damage with the Astonishes, whereas we would take super effective damage from the Dragon Breaths. I swap once again, getting very quickly to that Psyshock, able to connect again. The opponent goes for a Wrap there before swapping into a Grumpig. Now, I could have access to Shadow Ball. You could argue I should have at least farmed up to it, as the opponent does no-shield that, recognizing maybe that there was not enough energy for the Shadow Ball, or maybe just thinking they could tank it anyways. But either way, at this point we come back in with the Appleton. I'm going to shield the first move, as I felt like they were more likely to full send a Shadow Ball first and then go for Dynamic Punch, but actually they go for Dynamic Punch both times around there. We can come back in with our Slowbro, get the Snipe with the confusion damage, and their final Pokemon is going to be a regular Credilli. Now here I'm going to look to throw just before they do reach a Rock Team. However, this is a CMP tie, meaning this is going to be a Rock Slide. Rock Slide, of course, does cost less energy, but it means they cannot debuff my attack stat. Here, I predict the opponent might try and make a catch. They do exactly that, and as a result, I'm able to confusion farm down that Grumpig, come out with the Sludge Bomb loaded. It connects, it does big damage, and at this point, this is going to be game over. Rock Slide doesn't deal enough there. The opponent could technically throw a charge move, however, they recognize there's nothing they can do up against my final Pokemon, and so they do allow the full farm down. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. You can see Firo in the lead, of course. Not a great matchup for me once again. We say swap into Slowking, and we're met with a Gastrodon. Now, I'm hoping this isn't going to be a double Mud Slap team here, but the opponent is going to fire off the charge move, not allowing me to reach a second Psyshock. They full send the Water Pulse, which they needed to do, otherwise we would live a Body Slam and get to a second move. But now we come back in with the Appleton. Unfortunately, haven't quite put them into farm down range before they will reach back-to-back charge moves here. So they fire off the first first body slam doesn't deal too much damage, but with the mud slaps, that is actually starting to add up here. They do reach a second body slam just before we farm them down. I've got a lot of energy, so I'm just going straight for Outrage. Outrage does huge damage, and again, able to snipe with the confusion damage from Slowbro, but their final Pokemon is going to be a second Mud Slapper. Now, of course, we do have an energy advantage. We fire off that first Brutal Swing. The opponent is going to go for a charge move. Of course, I'm going to shield as I do now have energy for the Brutal Swing. I'm going to look to overfarm just slightly here. Brutal Swing is going to actually not be shielded by the opponent. That was the correct play. However, they then make a huge mistake. They fire off a charge move. They should commit to the full fast move, farm down, and in throwing there, they actually allow a simultaneous KO, and I'm able to tie that game there. I was about to say able to take that game. Nope, that was definitely a tie, but still, we will take it considering that was a full hard counter team. But GG's to a trainer into next battle, and speaking of hard counters, we see a Alolan Sandslash in the lead. That thing just completely core breaks the entire team. Very problematic for me, but I have put this Feraligatr into range where I can Astonish farm them down. Worst case scenario, they get to a Hydro Cannon, but they actually don't even get to that. Now they come back in. We have now seen that this is going to be a Shadow Claw Sandslash, so I am going to shield here. I can afford to stay in this matchup because I'm not taking that much fast move pressure, but eventually I will try and look to make a catch. However, of course, using Astonish into a 2-turn fast move, it is quite difficult to make those catches, so I swap out straight away, hoping I've caught an Ice Punch here, but the opponent has reacted in time. They go for the Drill Run, and even worse for me, they've got Azumarill in the back. Now, Azumarill, of course, going to take super effective damage from the Sludge Bomb, but they can just safely shield that up there. I do throw straight away because I needed to get there before they throw an Ice Beam, but, I mean, they've just got two Pokemon that can deal double super effective damage. There's no point shielding here. Ice Beam easily takes out the Appleton, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. You see Gastrodon in the lead, so much better lead matchup for me. This time they safe swap into Fearow, and honestly, I should probably come in with the Slowbro just because we do have more fast move pressure with the confusions, potentially in the 2-shield scenario. I can actually just double shield and fully farm them down. Whereas here, unfortunately, Acid, whilst it's a decent fast move, we are dealing decent fast move pressure here in this matchup. They will still be able to double shoot if they want to and flip this matchup. However, I'm going to look to overfarm as much as possible. They did full send the draw on both times around, and the opponent actually going to no shield there. That is huge for me. Able to maintain alignment. Of course, I'm going to fire off another Side Shock. Side Shock does just under half their HP. With the acid damage, we do get them to half health, and their final Pokemon going to be a Togekiss. Now, this isn't the worst matchup for me. The opponent is going to go for a Psyshock. Psyshock, of course, going to hit for neutral damage up against the Poison and Psychic typing. I'm going to have to full send a Sludge Bomb. I won't reach another Charge Move anyways, so might as well full send the Sludge Bomb. I guess if I bait it with a Brutal Swing, I do get to another one, but either way, it doesn't really matter too much. At this point, we're going to come back in with the Appleton, and they do throw immediately. Now, here, I've got to be very careful. I expect the opponent swaps back into Gastrodon, and they do exactly that, so I throw that Seed Bomb straight away. They've got a lot of energy, but it all goes to waste, and I'm actually able to just narrowly once again get the full Astonish farm down just before they reach another charge as well, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see Shadow Sizzle in the lead. Now, this is definitely one of the worst Pokemon we can see with this team. However, we do have neutral damage with the Astonishes, and it's a Shadow Sizzle, so they are very likely to shield here. So I'm going to go for a Seed Bomb bait. Seed Bomb, going to grab a shield. And now I think I probably have to double shield here, otherwise I just cannot fast move farm them down. But with that double shield, we narrowly once again get that full Astonish farm down. However, unfortunately for me, they've got two very hard counters to my backline in the form of Galarian Corsola and, of course, Gastrodon. We've seen this many times already, though. These Side Shocks deal decent damage in this matchup, but the opponent gonna recognize they can actually just narrowly live two Side Shocks and get off a Water Pulse. Now, we do still have a potential win condition, but it will rely on a sacrificial catch here. So what we're going to do is we are going to go for a Brutal Swing. I'm then going to wait 3 turns, go for the swap here, look to try and throw a Charge Move on CMP as they get to the Nightshade. But unfortunately for me, the opponent does look to overfarm, and as a result, they come out with the Charge Move loaded. And of course, Nightshade, super effective, gets the KO there, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the next battle and see Primeape in the lead. So this is actually a little bit awkward for me because well, they could be running Ice Punch, which would one-shot me as it's double super effective. I'm going to shield. It is just a Rage Fist bait, unfortunately. Now they're boosted, I don't really want to swap out of this matchup because I've got 2 Pokemon that are going to take super effective damage from the Rage Fist. But I'm going to no shield here, hoping I can tank this, and I'm able to do so. Now I'm going to go for another Seed Bomb here, and if they shield this, I probably will eventually swap out. I'm hoping I've put them into range where I can Acid Farm them down. However, I'm actually not entirely sure if I can, so I do no shield just in case they would have stayed in and got to another Rage Fist. Then I'm going to come in with a Credilli, but they're on Bullet Seed, both of which are resisted by Galarian Slowking here, but we can actually throw another Psyshock as they overfarm, and that puts them into perfect farm down range. Of course, gonna no shield this. Rock Tomb gets the KO. We can come in, get that Confusion farm down with the Slowbro, and let's see the opponent comes back in with Primeape just to be fully farmed down there. Of course, they would have hoped that they were going to reach another Rage Fist, but one Confusion gets the full farm down, and they don't even farm to an Earthquake, so I can very safely no shield the Stone Edge, fire off these Brutal Swings. Brutal Swings, not really going to do too much damage. It is non-stab, but it is the Confusion damage that is adding up over time. We fire off another one here. Brutal Swing gets them very low. We do have another charge we've loaded, but we're going to save some time, go for that Confusion farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. Slightly awkward lead matchup for us, but we are going to double resist the faster damage. I'm actually going to fire off a Seed Bomb just before the opponent even reaches a potential play rough, because that way, if I do allow them to throw first, there is that potential that they end up baiting with a Parabolic Charge and then boosting up their defense. But now we're going to farm up a lot. We then snipe with the Slowking, and again met with a Gastrodon. So I feel like I basically saw Gastrodon or Credilli, or potentially both of those Pokemon on almost every single team today. Like, honestly, it is so boring right now. So apologies for that. There's a lot of different games that feel very similar because of the teams that I'm facing. But anyways, we're going to come in with the Appleton. There it is. Of course, Shadow Credilli as well after we've seen the Gastrodon. I don't know how they get a 0-turn swap here because, of course, they did just KO my Pokemon. Obviously, usually when you throw a charge move, you can have a 0-turn swap, but if it KOs the opposing Pokemon, usually that does not occur. So I don't know if that's a new update or something. I had it happen several times today, which is very frustrating. Either way, it's not going to impact the game too much, as I am just barely able to throw a Sludge Bomb here. Sludge Bomb doesn't quite KO, but it doesn't really matter. The damage is done at this point. Of course, Earth Power, that was massive overkill, but that's fine with me. We can come in, fire off the Seed Bomb before they reach another Rock Tomb, and Seed Bomb from this range gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. We see Appleton into Talonflame. So, honestly, not the worst matchup, but I am going to swap out anyways because I've got 2 Pokemon that, well, I need to bait out Gastrodon if they've got it, which every single team seems to have a Gastrodon. Oh my gosh. I do apologize. But anyways, we're going to go for another Psyshock here. Psyshock number 2, once again, going to get them very low. If they no shield, and actually we can go for the farm down. I'm quite unsure as to why they played it like that, but they come back in with the Talonflame, and you are going to see a bit of a miscount on my end. So at this point, they do have 80 energy. I hadn't realized they threw 2 Incinerates before they swapped out. So here, we go for 1 Confusion. We throw on good timing, going for a Brutal Swing, and the opponent is now going to overfarm. Now, they are only 1 away from the next charge move if they go for a Fly, which they do there. If they went for Flame Charge, I could have gone for a full farm down, but they go for Fly, meaning they just barely have the energy for the next Fly, and as a result, they've got another Credilli in the back. What a crazy surprise there. Gastrodon and Credilli in the back. But at this point, unfortunately, because they are on acid there, they can debuff my attack stat. We will just barely reach an Outrage, but since I'm debuffed, and because their acids are adding up over time, Outrage doesn't deal enough damage, and actually it doesn't really matter too much as they do reach another charge move. Rock Tomb gets the KO there. And unfortunately, I do lose that game. But of course, if I had kept better track of their energy, could have thrown the Brutal Swing into Talonflame, and then we do still have the opportunity to swap out of the matchup if they did no shield there and come in with Credilli. But anyways, into next battle. Speaking of Credilli, we're going to see it in the lead this time around. They are not going to swap out here, so at this point, they fire off the Rock Tomb. We are going to no shield that. I'm now going to look to overfarm again, firing off the Psyshock just before they reach that next charge move. Psyshock going to be no shielded, and very good timing by the opponent here as they will throw another Rock Tomb. At this point, I'm actually going to shield this because I feel like I might need switch advantage here. We go for another Psyshock. Psyshock gets the KO, and they're going to come in with a Charizard. So I swap out straight away. I should be able to tank even a Blast Burn here. Of course, the regular Slowbro would be a part Water-type Pokemon, so this would be a much better matchup for me, but we do reach a Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing grabs the final shield, they commit to the farm down, but they still don't get there in time. Slowbro able to reach another Brutal Swing, getting the KO there. Their final Pokemon gonna be a Primeape, and at this point, we can come back in with the Slowking, go straight for Psyshock. Psyshock does big damage. We snipe with one Astonish from the Appleton, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Mightyena in the lead. So, I already know or have a rough idea of the backline. It's probably going to have a Wigglytuff and then some sort of ground-type Pokemon, maybe a Mudslap user, maybe Steelix, not really sure. Either way, I recognize that it's going to be slightly problematic for me, but actually, mostly, it's just the Mightyena that is going to be an issue for this team, because once they get rid of the Appleton here, I'm going to take huge damage from these Sucker Punches. So, I do swap out here. Very likely they bait with a Poison Fang, and they do bait there, unfortunately, but they come in with a Digger's Beast. So now I'm going to look to overfarm. I'm going to throw a Surf on the CMP tie here. Of course, Surf going to hit for super effective damage. It does just under half the HP there, but with the acid damage, that actually gets them into the yellow health range. Of course, it is 6 to the next Scorching Sands, so I'm going to come in with the Slowbro. I'm going to go for 3 Confusions, then look to swap, make a catch onto the Appleton, and that works out perfectly for me. Scorching Sands going to get the KO, but then they swap into Wigglytuff. Now, this is kind of a strange play on my end. Honestly, I thought Sludge Bomb wouldn't quite get the KO there, but it does KO. And now here, I'm forced to go for a Brutal Swing, hoping this would get the KO. But Brutal Swing does not take them out there. Of course, that is non-stab resisted damage. I should have just settled for the Sludge Bomb there, but unfortunately, we do end up going down to the Sucker Punch damage, and I end up losing that game. But GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see another Dark type in the lead, but this time a lot better for me, as it is going to be a Greninja. Of course, Greninja is hitting for double resisted damage with the Water Shurikens. They don't get a boost or anything, so here, going to stay in, fire off the Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb going to be shielded. The opponent is going to bank a Night Slash before swapping into their Shadow Cradily. Now, maybe I should have thrown a Charge Move there, but we do swap out. We bank a ton of energy on our Appleton. However, unfortunately, I'm not going to reach back-to-back Psyshocks before they get to yet another Rock Tomb. So at this point, we kind of need Switch Advantage, so I will actually be shielding in this matchup. They fire off the next Rock Tomb. I'm now going to look to overfarm and fire off another Psyshock. Psyshock gets the KO there. I'm actually going to come back in with the Appleton. I don't want to allow them to get any extra farm. We snipe with the Seed Bomb. We grab the final shield there, and now they're going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Clodsire. So, of course, not ideal for me, but actually not the worst case scenario either, as I full send an Outrage, and this will force the opponent to throw some energy. The opponent goes for Stone Edge. That's fine with me. We can come in with the Slowbro, of course, resisting the fast move damage. Gonna shield, as the worst thing they can throw is an Earthquake. They bait with a Stone Edge. I don't really care. The opponent swaps out. They go for the CMP tie, but I can tank a Night Slash, whereas unfortunately for Greninja, this Sludge Bomb is going to deal huge damage. Sludge Bomb barely doesn't get the KO. I was going to swap out if they weren't quite in Confusion farm down range, but they were, so I'm able to Confusion farm down the Clodsire as well, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Shadow Kanto Marowak in the lead here, and the opponent is going to choose to stay in, which is fine with me, but it might imply that they are double weak to the Appleton. So at this point, we fire off the Seed Bomb, they no shield, and I'm actually going to shield here just in case they have a second Pokemon weak to the grass typing. They swap into a Shadow Talonflame. I swap into my Galarian Slowking, and just narrowly able to outpace him to that first move. Psyshock going to be shielded. Flame Charge, unfortunately, does not get the KO there, which means they do get the Incinerate farm down. They get more energy, and that is definitely not ideal for me, but we're going to come in with the Slowbro, and the opponent is going to go for 2 Incinerates, and then fire off the charge move. The opponent fires off the fly. They swap back into Shadow Marowak, but we do get a full farm down. But now they're going to come in with a Gastrodon. So they were running double Mudslap, but ABA style. So I'm definitely happy I saved the Appleton. The opponent no shields. Seed Bomb still doesn't get the one shot there, but it does put them into Astonish farm down range, and that will certainly be game over. The opponent can come in. They can try and go for a full farm down, but it's actually Appleton that gets the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see Appleton into Greninja once again. So, once again, definitely where we want to see the Greninja for this team. They are going to go straight for the Night Slash, and then possibly going to swap out of this matchup, and the opponent is going to stay in, actually, so we can go straight for Seed Bomb here. Seed Bomb, not the best move, but it should KO Greninja. However, they come in with a Galarian Corsola, and unfortunately, they've got two Pokemon that do very well into my backline. So here we full send the Outrage, dealing huge damage and also forcing them to throw some energy. Honestly, we've kind of gotten too low. I kind of need a slight edge advantage on the Slowking, as this Greninja does already have a Night Slash loaded. They even go for a slight extra over farm here. So I'm going to shield this. I'm now going to commit to a Surf. Surf is also resisted, but Psyshock is double resisted. Surf is going to grab the final shield here. However, unfortunately, they can actually outpace me to back-to-back Night Slashes. So we're going to shield the first one, and then unfortunately, I have to swap out here as I would lose CMP, and also Psyshock won't KO anyways. They go for Night Slash, and now they can still outpace me to the next charge move, but I'm hoping there's something in the back that Slowking can beat in the end game. Of course, we still can't quite go for a full farm down there. Maybe if I get the farm down, I could win this game, but the opponent has a Shadow Scissor, so actually their entire team was really strong into my backline. We made it fairly close there, but unfortunately Surf just doesn't do anywhere near enough damage. The opponent at the Night Slash, it gets the KO, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the next battle. You can see another Dragonair in the lead. So once again, going to say swap into Slowking. The opponent going to choose to stay in here. This time going to go straight for either an Aqua Tail or a Body Slam. It is the Aqua Tail there, which is fine with me. They then swap into their Shadow Kanto Marowak. I'm not entirely sure if I get to back-to-back charge boost here, so I go for Surf in case I don't. But actually, we do hang on. We live one more Mud Slap, which does allow me to reach a Psyshock. Unfortunately, they did shield the first one, but Psyshock still does respectable damage there. However, of course, I would have preferred to land the Surf. But either way, gonna shield the rock side. The opponent is now just gonna settle for, I believe, a Bone Club. So I'm definitely gonna no-shield this. Bone Club is resisted, but they swap into a Fortress. And again, another Pokemon that my backline does not appreciate. However, we do take neutral damage from the Bug Bites. I can also reach a Brutal Swing, and Brutal Swing is actually going to be no-shielded by the opponent, and then they throw straight away. So I'm hoping, even if they debuff my attack stat with a Rock Tomb, I can commit to a farm down, and I am just barely able to get that farm down. That is huge for me. I come out with back-to-back Brutal Swings. First one, gotta be no-shielded by the Marowak, and I'm committing to a Sludge Bomb this time around. Presumably, they no-shield this, as Appleton can have Outrage, and the opponent does actually let that go through. And even better for me, this is not going to be a wrap. It's just an Aqua Tail, and as a result, we get the Astonished farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there, into the next battle. We see Primeape in the lead once again. So once again, slightly awkward for me if they do farm up to a potential Ice Punch there, and the opponent does exactly that. They actually full send a close combat before swapping into Corviknight. Now again, Corviknight is another Pokemon that is very problematic for me. I can actually stay in here as these Air Cutters don't deal that much damage, and I was resisting the fast moves. However, unfortunately, now they're boosted, I definitely have to shield this. They do, luckily for me, full send a Payback, and now here I'm going to farm up to close to back-to-back charge moves, going for Surf. Surf does okayish damage there. This time, just going to settle for a Side Shot because I'm hoping to grab a shield here, and I do exactly that. But the opponent can now look to overfarm a little bit, fire for the charge move, and they do once again full send a Payback. I'm now going to come in with the Slowbro. I can outpace them, but the opponent makes a very nice catch there, catching onto Unova Stunfisk. But that's fine with me. I can actually stay in this matchup, bank a Brutal Swing, and then come back in with the Appleton. Now, Seed Bomb is going to hit for super effective damage here. And unfortunately, I will need a second Seed Bomb to get the KO. I cannot commit to a full farm down, but I'm going to farm up to back-to-back charge moves before throwing. Now, we're still in a very awkward situation here as I'm forced to go for the Seed Bomb, but Seed Bomb, of course, not going to deal that much damage. It does grab the shield here, but the opponent can now reach a Rage Fist. I expect the opponent to swap out straight away, so I'm actually going to wait here, but no, they didn't swap out straight away. They wait for me to start going for Confusion, which is the smart play, and as a result, they fire off the Air Cutter, they get the full farm down, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there into the final battle of this video, and this is actually going to be a team that Yonkers put out today, so interesting to see people already using it straight away. This is actually one of Yonkers' more fun teams. It was just a full Weather Ball theme team here, but we are going to shield as the opponent does have access to Scorching Sands, and now I'm going to go for a Side Shock. I wasn't certain that this was the Weather Ball team until I saw the second Pokemon, so I'm actually going to double shield just in case I need Switch Advantage as they full send another Scorching Sands. The opponent now going to come in with Cast Form, and at this point I'm like, yep, okay, it's going to be a Bomber Snow in the back, which is definitely not ideal for my Appleton, but also Appleton not going to be great into Cast Form either, as we do have double resisted fast food pressure with the Astonish damage. But anyways, we're going to stay in this matchup, get off as much damage as possible. They do farm up to back-to-back Weather Balls here, and then they get the full farm down, so quite tricky for me, but they're going to swap into a Bomber Snow, and here, honestly, I don't know who wins CMP, and you're going to see that I cannot tank 2 Weather Balls, so I'm not going to risk it. Instead of going for Sludge Bomb here, I'm just going to settle for a Brutal Swing. What I'm hoping is that this will put them into Astonish farm down range, and then we come out with a Seed Bomb loaded. Weather Ball gets the KO there. They are now energy dry. However, we cannot get that full farm down, and that is definitely not ideal. We go for Seed Bomb. Seed Bomb does get the KO there, but the opponent, I believe, has slightly more than back-to-back charge moves, slightly more than a single charge move loaded, but apparently not, as we win CMP here. And Seed Bomb, is this enough damage? Yes, it is, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.